All right. Oh my goodness. So, hey guys, it's been a while. Today I'm going to be doing a video that a lot of people over on my Instagram asked for me to film, as I've mentioned it several times on different live streams on my Instagram, but I don't think I've ever really talked about it here on YouTube. And that is why I don't ever want to own a lop rabbit again. Now, before I say anything, obviously, this doesn't mean I won't ever own a lop again. All of my rabbits are rescues, and I kind of just get whatever rabbit gets along with my current rabbits. So obviously, I could very well end up with a lop rabbit in the future if they end up bonding with one of my rabbits or whatever. But that being said, I currently would struggle a lot owning a lop rabbit, and I kind of wanted to talk about that because a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, why? Like, lops are my favorite breed. They're so cute. They're so amazing. Like, all this stuff. And yeah, figured I would talk about it. But first of all, I look like this. But you know what? People on Instagram told me if the way I look was stopping me from filming, to just not care about it, because they would rather see a video from me than me looking all dolled up. And honestly, if you want to see someone who looks nice, go watch like some lifestyle vlogger, not me. That's just not me. And I don't really wear makeup anymore. I get very sick from it. I'm allergic to almost every makeup on the entire market. And it stops me from wanting to film. And I have not done my hair either, so yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So, as you guys know, if you've followed me for a while, I had a lop rabbit for 8.5 years. His name was Mocha, and he was my first ever rabbit. I brought him home when I was 12 years old, and he was my first bunny. I made a lot of mistakes with him, but very quickly I did learn about proper house rabbit care, and that's what inspired me to make this YouTube channel, 101 Rabbits, and that was to educate people who didn't know proper rabbit care, and especially for those like who didn't know about indoor rabbits and things like that. So I really wanted to create my channel because of him, and I didn't know anything when I got him, and then I learned. So Mocha was pretty much the inspiration for this channel. And obviously I loved Mocha so much. He was my first rabbit. He bonded with Lulu, my second rabbit that I got. They were best friends. They lived together until Mocha passed away. Both amazing rabbits, love them dearly. But Mocha was quite traumatic for me towards the end of his life. And for that reason, I've struggled a lot with, I guess, the trauma surrounding his death. And it has caused me to struggle a lot when I'm around lop rabbits, which I've been around lop rabbits recently just because we used to foster bunnies at our shop. Our shop has now closed down because our online business got too big. So we had to move storage into our shop location. So we did have to stop the foster program just because we're using that entire space for storage now. But we had several lop rabbits that came in and out of our doors through the foster program. And then I also did a video a while back bonding some lop bunnies. Well, one of them was a lop. And yeah, I just hadn't been around lop rabbits since Mocha had passed away until this past year. And I kind of realized that it's really difficult for me to be around them and not be incredibly anxious. And it might sound weird to some people, like why one breed would just cause you anxiety, but I thought I would just go into the story about Mocha and what he went through, especially his last 2 years of life, more like 1.5 years of his life. And I don't think I've talked about this on YouTube much. I do believe I gave a little bit of health updates while he was alive and kind of talked about what was going on with him, but I don't know if I ever fully explained the story in detail, simply because it was very traumatic for me. So I thought I would kind of share that because a lot of people expressed interest in wondering why I struggle around lop rabbits. So first of all, his first 7 years of life were basically fine. He never got stasis, he never got sick. I think he maybe had a UTI once, but it was like you gave him antibiotics and he was fine. The only thing he had the first 7 years of his life is he was deaf. which a lot of lop rabbits are deaf because of the way they were bred to have a smushed face, which I don't believe breeding lop rabbits is ethical at all. But the way their face is shaped and the way their ears are down, a lot of the times lop rabbits' ears will seal off, causing them to become deaf. So Mocha was deaf his entire life, but it really didn't bother him that much. The main things that did cause a little bit of issues is if I was to walk into the room, he slept so soundly, like most lops do. He would flop over, eyes closed, totally out of it. So sometimes I would walk into the room and scare him on accident. And there were times that he got so freaked out that he would fall off of things. He would just start flying around, terrified. So that was the one thing that being deaf did kind of affect his life, but he never got injured. He never, affected him that much. And for the most part, Lulu was honestly kind of like a service animal for him, I guess you could say. I know that's like a really weird thing to say, but I don't know if she knew he was deaf or just that's how she communicated, but Mocha would be sleeping, and when it was time for food, if he wasn't awake, she would bite his butt until he woke up, and then he would notice her body language being excited, and he's like, oh, it's food time. So it was extremely beneficial for him to be bonded to Lulu, as without that, I don't think he would know when food time was, when certain things were happening, because he was deaf and just couldn't hear it. The one downfall to that is if Lulu got scared, even if he couldn't hear the noise, he would also get scared because he would read her body language. But yeah, it was really beneficial for him to be with Lulu. So first 7 years of his life, fairly normal, fairly easy, and he did great besides being deaf. Then around the age of 7, he started to show some eye issues. We didn't know what was going on, but it started with his face. I think it was mainly one eye. Oh shoot, what eye was it? I don't remember what eye it was, but it was mainly one of the eyes. I think eventually both of his eyes ended up getting it as well, but it was just, he would have tears just streaming down his face at all times, and it was just so watery and so gooey that obviously it wasn't normal. Lulu did an amazing job cleaning it, because if your rabbit doesn't have a companion that cleans eye gunk out like that, if your rabbit has an eye issue, they can actually get sores and like ulcers, I believe, from the constant wetness on their face. So it was great that Lulu was there. She cleaned them like every hour of every day. So it was actually really hard to get a photo for my veterinarian to see how much liquid was coming out of his eye. So we started by just going to the vet, looking at his eye. Everything kind of looked okay. So we scheduled a dental, because lop rabbits are very prone to dental issues and dental disease. So there are some cases that if the teeth are overgrown, the roots will grow up into kind of like the eye area of the rabbit. So we thought his roots were pushing up against his eye and that he needed a dental. So we sedated him, gave him a dental, but after the dental, the vet came back saying that his teeth were fine. She said that she filed off like a tiny little thing, but she said nothing that would have caused this major eye issue. So because my veterinarian wasn't able to figure out what was going on, she referred us to UW-Madison, which is a state vet clinic that focuses on research, and they have specialties in every area of vet care. So they have like an ophthalmologist, which is an eye doctor. They have cardiologists, so like heart doctors. They have joint doctors, I forgot what they're called, but they have literally specialties for every situation of veterinary care. So they also have tons of exotic doctors as well. So the exotic doctors work with the specialists to figure out what's going on with your rabbit. So we made the 4-hour drive to Madison. This was before I lived where I do now. So it was 4 hours there, 4 hours back. We drove there and he had a full body CT scan, which required him to be sedated. The CT scan, I believe, was like $400 or more. I don't remember exactly. I believe his entire first visit there was close to $1,000. And basically the CT scan didn't show any issues with his teeth, which is what we thought was going on. So because there was nothing with his teeth, there was nothing with the other thing that could have caused eye issues is like the sinuses. They can flush out the sinuses, stuff like that, like respiratory issues. There was none of that going on. The one thing that the CT scan did show that we were not aware of was that he had an inner ear infection, which is very common in Holland Lops who are deaf. Because their ear canals are sealed off, bacteria gets trapped inside their inner ear canal and it can't escape. So Holland Lops are very, very prone to that. Most times though, they do show symptoms of inner ear infections. The eye issue he had going on was not a symptom of an ear infection, and he had no other symptoms. So it was a good thing we did the CT scan because we did find out he had that inner ear infection, and he was on injections for that inner ear infection for like a couple weeks or whatever. So yeah, after the CT scan, we did a bunch of blood work, bunch of other things. The last thing left was for him to see an ophthalmologist, which is an eye doctor. So we had him see the eye doctor, and basically they did this test where they put special liquid in the eye and then they look under it with special lighting. So my veterinarian actually did sort of a test like this. She like looked at his eyes and stuff under special lighting, but she's not an ophthalmologist, so she wasn't able to make a diagnosis. Whereas this doctor was an ophthalmologist and was able to make a diagnosis. And his diagnosis was cornea ulcerations. And basically a cornea ulceration can come from like damage to the cornea, and it creates an ulcer on top of the eyeball. And normally you treat them with special medication and then the ulceration goes away. With Mocha, he oddly had chronic cornea ulcers, which means it didn't go away with treatment. I believe we got sent home with eye drops and eye cream, along with that penicillin to inject into him for his ear infection. That was after the first visit, and his eye issue did not go away. So we ended up having to go back to Madison, and they ended up, actually I don't know if we went back to Madison or if we just called them and they prescribed it over the phone. Don't remember. But basically, medicine didn't work, and he ended up being the first rabbit in the state of Wisconsin to be prescribed contacts. So contacts were not to allow him to see better, but basically it was treating his cornea ulcers. So the issue with cornea ulcers is it is very painful. So when the rabbit's eyes are open, the oxygen in the air burns the cornea ulcer, so it like hurts really bad. So his issue was he was basically blind because he would close his eyes because the pain was so bad for his eyes to be open. He was also on pain meds, by the way. We weren't just like not treating his pain. He was on pain meds. He was on Medicam for the last like year and a half of his life. So he was on pain meds, but it just wasn't getting better. So we got see-through contacts. So there was no prescription in them. It doesn't help him see better. It just protects the eye from oxygen, basically. So we put contacts in his eye, and he had them changed every 2 weeks. There are risks with rabbits wearing contacts. They can fall out, they can dry up and damage the cornea. We didn't have any issues with them. Sometimes they did fall out, but most times I just changed them every 2 weeks and it was completely fine. But they were $60 a time. Like every time you changed them, it was $60. So it was kind of expensive. But it was the best thing for him because he was still closing his eyes the majority of the time, but he was able to open them at times and use his eyes if he needed to. Towards the end of his life, he didn't use his eyes as much as he used to, just because I'm assuming the cornea ulcers probably progressed as he went on, but yeah, he was on contacts. So that was interesting, and very interesting to learn how to put contacts in a rabbit's eye, as I have never used contacts, so I didn't know how to use them, so they had to show me and everything. And oddly enough, I have like a weird squeamish reaction when it comes to eyeballs. So the first time I put eye cream on his eye, I almost passed out. And then the first time I gave him a penicillin injection, I almost passed out as well. Which is kind of funny because I do injections all the time on rabbits and myself, and I'm completely fine with it now. Anyways, so that was what happened first. And He was fine for about a year after that. Actually, I don't remember the time frame. I don't think it was about a year. It was probably like 6 months. Then one night, this was when I was still living with my parents, and I had an attic room above the bunny room, so I could hear everything that was going on quite easily. And I was up in my bed, I think it was like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. It was like late in the afternoon or night, and I heard this really loud sound. Like, the rabbits sounded like they were throwing themselves around the room. So I was like, what is going on? And then I heard it again, and I immediately like ran down the ladder, because I had a ladder that went into their room. And I go down there, and Mocha is having what I would call seizures on the floor. He was uncontrollably flailing and shaking, and honestly, I don't remember it a ton because I blocked it. Like, it was so traumatic for me to see that. I think, you know, anyone who's seen a human or an animal have a seizure would agree it's pretty traumatic to see. Of course, I grabbed him and I tried to hold him still so that he wouldn't injure himself, because he was like flailing across the entire room. I was able to get him in an enclosed like space that was all like fleece covered, and he did have a couple more after that, but they were lesser than the ones that had happened before, if that makes sense. So I don't know how many he had in total. It was maybe like 7 different like seizures or spasms within, you know, a 10-minute period, and it was extremely scary. So my dad drove me down to Madison that night, because at this point, I was convinced he was dying. After seeing him have that many seizures, or whatever they were, multiple times in a row, I was convinced he was going to die. So we obviously drove him to the emergency vet, which was still 4 hours away. We got there, but basically by the time we got there, he was stabilized. He wasn't actively dying. He was able to like eat and drink and stuff like that. So they basically, I don't know if they gave him fluids or pain meds or what they did, but we had to stay the night in the hotel, and then the next morning we met with the doctor and discussed what was going on. He ended up having another CT scan, lots of blood work, lots of tests, and everything came back normal, which is weird because it's very odd for a rabbit to go through all of that and then no answers. So the 2 possible causes was, one, something that scientists have not researched yet, and it's some sort of disorder or issue that he had that was not detectable on any tests that we have available to us. The other option, which is what my vet thought he had, was lymphoma. Lymphoma is a type of cancer that is in the lymph nodes, and sometimes it's undetectable in any test that you can run on an animal. So basically, she thought he had the beginning stages of lymphoma, and she told me that he would pass away most likely within 2 weeks, which was extremely hard to hear. I was devastated, obviously. I think I cried for like a week straight after I came home from that appointment. We ended up rearranging the entire rabbit room to accommodate him in case he was to have another seizure again. He was placed on a anti-nausea medication because he started falling over a lot, which now that I'm looking back, I believe his falling over was due to arthritis, not from his seizures, but I didn't know that back then, so he was on that medication to help him not be as dizzy, which, I mean, it didn't hurt him and it didn't make him necessarily better. And then he was on pain meds and all that, and basically my recommendation was to keep him comfortable until he died, which was horrible. Every time like I went in the room, I was like, is he dead? Is he gonna die? Is he, like, it was just a horrible two weeks. But after those 2 weeks, it was kind of like, okay, he's not dead yet. He's acting completely fine. I mean, besides his eye issue and everything else, what exactly is going on? So we basically just kind of kept giving him the medicines that he was on for the remainder of his life. And the best the vets could say is he's a medical mystery and we have no idea why he survived, and we have no idea what he has or what he did have. And they basically had no answers for us, which was really hard for me because I wanted to know what it was. But again, that just really wasn't a thing that could happen. So fast forward to that summer, I ended up being placed in a partial hospitalization program for severe anxiety. I've had mental health problems my entire life, and I ended up being hospitalized for it that year, but it was a partial program, which meant I was not, like, I still had my phone, I still was able to go home at night, but because the hospital was so far away, I stayed in a hotel room and I was able to go home on the weekends. So I was still like seeing the bunnies and I was still making YouTube videos. I was still doing things like that. But one of the weekends that I came home, I was with Mocha the day before. It was like a Saturday. I was with him all day, and I remember giving him a treat that night and being so happy that he was so excited. I remember, because he was pretty out of it the last year of his life. Like, anyone who met him could probably tell that he was old and not doing well, which he was only 8 at that point. Well, 8.5 when he did pass away. So to see him like get so excited and run up to the pen and just take the treat and be so excited, it made me so happy, because like, that didn't happen every day. He was not always like that because he couldn't hear, he couldn't see, he didn't have much energy, he probably had arthritis, and you know, he just kind of slept all the time. So for him to be so excited, he ran up to the fence, got a treat, was so excited. I just remember being like, oh my goodness, he's like doing so well. And then the next morning, I got a phone call from my dad. So I had my own house in the same town as my parents' house, but the rabbits were staying with my parents because I was hospitalized. But I had to go home to like go get some stuff, and my dad called me and said that Mocha had passed away. This was maybe 8 hours after, so it was like overnight that it had happened. So I gave him a treat before bed, and then I woke up the next morning to my dad's phone call. And basically my dad had woke up in the morning, gone downstairs, and found him. So obviously I went right over there, and I don't really want to talk about that moment because that's like kind of traumatic, but it was just, part of me was like, okay, because I mean, we had been expecting this for a year. Like a year ago, a doctor told me that he was gonna die in 2 weeks. But then a year later, he was still there. So like for the past year, I had sort of been prepping myself for him to pass away because I was told he was going to. But then like, it was also still such a surprise because of how well he was still doing. So we don't know why he died. We don't know what condition he had. Most likely whatever he had did lead to his death. He was only 8.5, which some people say rabbits live 8 to 10 years. Other people say 10 to 12 years. And I think it really depends on the rabbits, their genetics, their conditions that they have. We just don't always know. And for Mocha, it was 8.5 years. So honestly, I feel like I was able to handle his death fairly well. I didn't blame myself, as I had literally spent thousands of dollars on all of these tests and everything came back normal. Oh, I forgot to mention, we also tested him for E. caniculi. We had the test sent all the way to, I believe the only testing center for E. caniculi that's accurate is in Florida somewhere. So we had it shipped all the way to Florida, came back negative, all of this stuff. So we had done every test in the world that you could do on a rabbit. And so I knew there was nothing really that we could have done to prevent it. It was just kind of his life. But for some reason now, whenever I come across a rabbit that looks like Mocha, acts like Mocha, has the same mannerisms as Mocha, I get pretty severe anxiety. And I don't know exactly why. I'm assuming just because everything Mocha went through was really traumatic for me. So when I see a rabbit that reminds me of him, it like brings back that trauma kind of, which definitely could be the thing. But like, lap rabbits tend to flop a lot and they sleep a certain way and they all kind of look the same. And there was just so many times like with the foster rabbits that like I couldn't even be around them without almost going into a panic attack. And obviously I think if I had a lap rabbit in the future, the new memories with that rabbit would help like recover, you know, my previous issues or trauma with laps. But like that's when people are always like, oh, why don't you like lap rabbits? It's not that I don't like them, it's that they cause me a lot of anxiety, and I think it's just because of all the trauma I went through. And yeah, I think anyone else who's had a chronically ill or traumatic issue with their pet would understand. Mocha was probably the worst issue I've ever gone through pet-wise. I've had a lot of pet issues, but like none of it was so life or death, I guess, situations like it was with Mocha. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's everything. I don't know if this video was even interesting, but some people were really interested in it and wondered why I didn't want rabbit or lap rabbits, and that's basically why. But honestly, I could totally see myself getting one in the future. It doesn't mean I wouldn't. Obviously, if my rabbits need a new friend and they end up getting along best with a lap rabbit, I'll probably end up getting the lap, but laps are prone to more health issues than the average rabbit. Obviously, average rabbits can also have issues, but laps, because of the way they are bred, have an increased chance or risk of certain medical issues. So but yeah, that's basically the video. Mocha passed away in 2017. I don't know if I mentioned that. And it is now 2021, so it has been quite a while. But I just thought I would share that story as, you know, I'm not as sensitive to it anymore, and I feel like I can speak about it without breaking down. So yeah, if you guys have any similar situations that you've been through, let me know down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, the relaxed style. Let me know if you want to do more videos like this, because I definitely would. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon on a new video. Bye!